All right, looks like we're good. Dun, dun, dun. Once again, as per usual, guys, welcome to the weekly Patreon Q&A. It's Ryan Stone, keeping this one fairly casual. And I'm looking your guys' stuff up in real time, so we're not doing any goofy prep work beforehand where I do up a canned speech. It's going to be very similar to how I work with initial clients, how I end up doing a little bit of research into some of their stuff if I don't immediately know it off the top of my head. And we can get into some of the more fun questions here. And then if there's time left over, I usually pick a topic or two that I'd like to go over that I think most people are missing. First one I want to go over is microphone placement. If you'll notice, for those who have a Blue Yeti, speaking into the top, absolutely useless. Speak parallel to the microphone. Keep it about a knuckle and a thumb away. All right. And I got the chat open. Looks like we're doing this one quiet, which is fine. One of the guys I had a consult with this week had a great point. He was actually a little concerned, and I'm assuming it's because of the timing of these things. I know for most guys with the regular 9 to 5 type job, they're either on their lunch hour if they're in California, or if they're here, they're well, that angle's kind of messed up. Here we go. Their lunch hour in California or on the West or on the East Coast, they're still finishing it up. Guys who are doing the high school thing also gone. Why is this taking so long to load? I want to pull up your guys' posts and questions. Hey, there it is. Posts. What are we on there? Week 29. Did I not? All right, either it's taken a long time to load or I forgot to put up the 29th week Q&As, which I'm pretty sure I did. I usually do those right after I'm done with these podcasts here. It must be Patreon going that's really this slow because it's not giving me any indication that Google is not. Screw it. Let's pull it up on the cell phone. We're Hodge twinning this. We're Hodge twinsing it. Oh, yeah, that's another thing, too. So I was talking with another client about this. Week 28, week 27. Oh, my God. Did I not put a week 29? All right. This one's going to be, this is kind of embarrassing on my part. I don't know how or why. I thought for sure I usually post those things right after, but there doesn't seem to be a week 29 prep post for your guys' questions. If I was you guys, what I would just done is start adding stuff onto the 28th. No, it doesn't look to be the case. That is strange. All right, if that's the case, then my apologies here. I let you guys down on that one. Last one I have on here is my first draft of Praxeology and the Dominant Man strategy. I can't remember where that one had come from. But moving forward. So chat is open. If you guys are in YouTube, feel free to join up. Do your thing. Oh, how you even realize to join? You know what? Let's do something a little bit different here. Let's open this one up. All right, so everybody's going to get a freebie on this one. We're opening up these Q&A sessions. We're going to put this one public onto YouTube. We'll do a last-minute thing, see who joins up and what for. We'll still carry it on for about the hour plus a couple minutes because I was obviously a few minutes late. And we'll use this one as a little bit of a primer, what people can be in store for every week, except for this one, apparently. Again, apologies. We'll double this stuff up. It's too bad you couldn't pause the live stream. I would love to pause during this dead section and then go back once I get this thing set up for public consumption. Thank you for those guys who are joining in. So for those who don't know, we're doing this one publicly now. A little slip up on my end. Works out as a benefit for you guys. For the Patreon subscribers, huge shout out to all 50 of them. They do great support. They've been with me from the beginning. So one of the extra value adds I offer for the guys on the first tier is we do these weekly Q&A sessions. I essentially give it till the end of the week, go through the list of questions as we're doing it on camera so I can live stream, show how I get the information I get, give good answers to it, preface it with some of the risks, some of the solutions that guys have come up with. Basically what I do already with my consulting service. This is very informal. It's not done with the polish of any of the cooking videos, red coffee. It's not done with that on the street kind of shaky cam work that we do on the vlogs. And it doesn't have the themed topics or the same format as either Red Morning or Rule Zero. This one here, completely casual. And if we're lucky here in the next minute and a half, 3 minutes, 7 minutes, however long it takes, this one is actually going to go live. I wonder if it is the internet. See, we're wired on this one here, so it should be speedy enough on this end. But I'm having the similar issues with YouTube where it's slow as balls. Oh, this is going to be the most awkward thing ever. Oh, yeah. Dear God, it went off as unlisted. All right, screw it. Doing it publicly. If people show up, they show up. If they don't, I'll just go off about the topic here for an hour. We'll switch it back. And your Patreon guys can have their Q&A session from there. A tweet I put out today was a nice one. It's something I've had a chance to mull over. It was after a feminist started arguing with a guy, Red Pill Dad, who's recently divorced. If I remember his story correctly, you'll have to correct me. Recently divorced, getting back into plate spinning, and he's basically taken the pill and he's gone off and done his thing. Awesome guy, a great follow. It's wonderful where you see a guy get his act together, and better yet, he's leaving notes for other guys around the thing. Don't mind the squeaking. That's the dog playing with his chew toy right now. It was about toxic masculinity. Now, I remember I have a whole bunch of research I did on when progressivism first started to become a thing, and this is like 2006, 2007, I think even as early as 2008. But it's one thing you have to be aware of. A lot of guys debate and have discussion and love to have arguments. The idea is that these arguments are how guys hone their thoughts, reflect on their ideas, sharpen their skills, and then maybe learn something from the other person. In reality, that's not the case at all. Yeah, that one is Sagan. He loves his new little chew toy. Anyways, the problem is that's not what they are. That would be what they are if they're open communication. For a lot of guys who were adults in the early 2000s, you'll remember watching these conversations with Christopher Hitchens, the Four Horsemen, talking atheism. That's kind of the place where people want to be. If you go really back, you can go to that crypto-fascism, which was Gore Vidal and William Buckley, I believe it was. That's the gold standard. But what you're happening here is you're getting now is a different closed communication thing. And this is going to be good. It's on the same theme as my post on power talk and manipulation. The first thing you have to be aware of is in these kind of discussions, whether the person is arguing with you in good faith. Easiest way to tell that is what is their goal out of it? Do they want you to change your behavior, or do they want to express their ideas and possibly show the third party or the audience a better way of thinking about things? The latter one is usually a pretty good one. That's where people don't take it too personally. They talk about ideas. The problem comes when you discuss things with the person and their goal is merely to shame you or otherwise manipulate public sentiment towards you being a bad person. Rollo actually did a post on this one too. It was based on a Reddit thread by Whisper, one of the older vanguards in the Red Pill subreddit, where he discussed the true difference between blue pill and red pill. And I would argue from my tweets today, that's also along the lines of why we're having so much influx of argument over ideology versus apraxiology. First thing you'll see is somebody set the terms of the debate. Now, healthy debates don't normally go by the other person saying what language you can use, what terms you're allowed to use, and defining your terms in a way that benefits them and not you. That's essentially hobbling you. In this case, the feminist was arguing about toxic masculinity. And she kept working at making him apologize for being a man, essentially. So all men are toxic. Well, not all men. It's a horrible thing to say. We're not that toxic. Toxic is this. And then by accepting the term that toxic masculinity exists, you've already ceded the point. And now you're framing the argument within her terms, which in the case was, I believe, a feminist or a health at any size advocate. I couldn't tell you which, to be honest. But right there, all you're doing is you're falling into a girl's frame on this. With that progressive feminist mindset, it's probably one of the worst things you can do. I mean, the worst thing you could do is to be debating things online. If you need to learn something, you ask questions. At the point where you become a debate, unless you're getting paid to show up or it's some kind of branding exercise, it's really a waste of time. Don't sell people that don't want to be sold to. The second one they do is shame. And that usually comes with condescension. What is that? That is based on my work with the PAC model, psychological. It's parent, adult, child. That means most interactions, somebody will either act as a parent, as a child, or as an adult. And there are certain stable pairings. So parent and child works well. Adult and adult works well. You can't have two children or two parents. Eventually that creates an imbalance that has to be rectified. Where was I going with this? Oh, yes. So the problem with these discussions then is they no longer become about the ideas. The other person's sole goal is to establish you as some kind of moral minority or a moral backwater person. He is a bad person. Now, once that happens, the discussion's over. That's all they want is public support, and this taps into victimhood theory and all that crap. You'll end up getting this outrage culture where guys are on the guy's side, girls and white knights are on the girl's side, and they just like rooting for their team. It's blood sport. It's completely disingenuous, and it really doesn't improve your life as a man at all. So in the future, and I guess I'll talk about strategies to overcome this. Obviously, avoidance is the best one. Unless you need it for some kind of brand perception, there's no point in arguing with a feminist online at all. There's barely a point arguing with one in person. That feminist frequency chick, all I've heard that she does is she just calls people traitors and yells at them and then acts as if she's getting death threats constantly. It's the weirdest thing ever. Second best thing you can do is you make sure you argue your own argument from your terms and your frame of reference. That puts you on the strongest side of things. Now, we could talk about steel manning and all those type of debate tactics. Those are fine. Other people have explained them better than me, so I'm not going to waste your time on them here. What I will say is best to do, like I said, define your things on your own terms. Do not apologize. Do not be apologetic. And if the other person frames an argument in a way you disagree with, don't just say, well, that's a something fallacy and think that that's some kind of argument. That's an appeal to an authority. You're not appealing to an authority, you're appealing to an audience. So if something is an appeal to authority or a fallacy of what type of method, you move forward as if that is true, framing the argument as to why that fallacy is wrong. If somebody wants to appeal to authority and they just throw a random Medium article, that article is ridiculous. Like, sum it up for me. Show me that you understand it, because they're just throwing their garbage fire at your feet, expecting you to solve it for them. You're doing all the heavy lifting, and all they have to do is nitpick. It's something very pernicious, and you're going to notice this as you discuss things more with people online and off in any type of emotional argument. It is very easy to critique. We've seen it time and time again. Guys will look and, oh, well, he doesn't lift because he's 13% body fat or 15% of body fat, or you get the point. It's very easy then to dismiss the other person, and that's all the other person wants to do, because dismissals are easy. And a very teenage technique of dismissals are to just describe what the other person is doing, use the tone of voice that implies it's bad, but never actually say why it's bad. Oh yeah, look at this guy. He totally thinks toxic masculinity doesn't exist. Once you're getting those kind of arguments, you're not talking to a person. You're talking to, what does Peterson call it? Animus possession. I just say you're calling to an idiot and leave it at that. So that's the start off point on this one. For those just tuning in late, you're going to see a lot of dead air on this one. This is originally supposed to be the Patreon Red Pill Q&A. We do these ones weekly for all the Patreon guys, where they ask questions from the week before, and then I answer them live, doing research as necessary, providing things. Now, my fault there. I forgot to put the post of the weekly questions into the Patreon, so Nobody was aware of this one, so I just put it live, and I figured we'd do it in flesh. Also going to get back to some of the questions that people had for last week, which was pretty clever, and I think I missed some points that I wanted to go back on now. It would have been from one of my clients, actually, and I think I talked about it at the very beginning of this, but it hasn't been. There he goes, talking more about power talk in a marriage. So a lot of what I was talking about with the power talk and the status signaling within a confines of debate work perfectly well within a marriage too. When a wife wants to have a fight with you, it is never about the terms of the fight. It is always about you being a bad person, her being higher status than you, and you apologizing to her. These same techniques work. Don't frame things in her way. Distance is always the best thing. Boundary enforcement. If you do engage, make sure you talk about things on your terms. Keeping in mind, there is no combination of words you can give to a girl, whether you're dating or not, that will convince her that she's wrong and you're right. Their brains aren't wired for it, and it's a waste of time. Instead, what you're establishing is on her terms. You have higher status. This isn't serious. Things will be rectified. You're being the oak. And that's where poking fun, amuse mastery, agree and amplify, and fogging come in handy. The purpose of these arguments is to have a girl in a position where she can look up to you at the end of the argument. Once you get there, doesn't matter what words you use, doesn't matter what the argument is. The only thing that matters is, did you achieve that objective? If you can keep your ego out of it, most of the fights you have are going to be, first off, muted, secondly, fewer, and thirdly, usually to your benefit. A lot of these heated arguments that come with a heightened sense of emotions are sexual aphrodisiacs, the same as anxiety or anger. Remember, the trick is strong emotions, not positive emotions. You want to balance them back and forth. If you do just positive emotions, the problem is people grow numb to them after a while, and you eventually have to escalate the amount of niceness. So yesterday's apology becomes today's thing of flowers, becomes tomorrow's ring, becomes next Saturday's brand new car. Bouncing them back and forth between positive and negative is going to work out best for everybody. All right. Another good question that the guys had that I wanted to expand on this week. Where did it go? Where did it go? Yeah, this one I like. It's from a guy, JR, very switched on, who, if he is listening to this, I'm going to reach out to you after the cast is done, because I know you had some questions for me, and I got those for you. He was talking about way of coordinating meetups with guys that are switched on, going down that path without having it turn into a testicular cancer meeting. For those of you who don't know, calling things testicular cancer meetings is a shorthand term I came up with based on my experience from the first unnamed convention that's happening right now in an undisclosed location that you can see the location of in Instagram. When I first showed up in Florida, we went to the hotel, and all of the guests were at the bar on the first night swapping stories about how a girl had done them wrong. It was a very strange thing. Guys weren't swapping notes. Guys were just sitting there crying about losing their balls. It's an unkind way of pay it, but it was exactly the same thing as Palinchuk described during those initial testicular cancer meetings. The narrator couldn't sleep, so he decided to go and hear other guys talk about their problems, made him feel better about his problems, and then everybody got to sleep after a good cry. It's completely ridiculous. The MRAs love it. The MGTOWs love it. It's not a very RP thing to do. So when I do say it, it's a bit of a pejorative. When he was talking about was making like-minded men's groups, private communities, either online or off. And I gave him a good answer there, but I wanted to expand on it. Ian Ironwood has a post, the Sandbox, the Male Social Matrix. It's worth the read because it's a very good high-level explanation about how men generally get together in social circumstances. What you need is a mission. A single-handed goal that's the group's goal that's outside of any interpersonal relationships. That's why there's hunting clubs. That's why there is D&D clubs or whatever activity, from gaming to hunting, anything in between. There's always some purpose that the group has to be there. And there's always some way of establishing a hierarchy within the group, kind of like a military structure. The guy who's the best hunter is most likely going to be the top guy at the hunting club, but everybody there is a competent hunter. Otherwise, they don't really get let in. Guys don't get in unless they have initial fitness testing. Sometimes these ones are easy. Like I'll use the married red pill for an example. Uh, the amount and quality of posts a guy does there. So the more he contributes, the more he's seen as a higher value person within that small space. At the same time, the entrance exam there is essentially to bring more value than you take away. Value leeching, which is standard for online things where people just go in and ask questions. Easy way to kill an environment. So if a guy can go in there and post a field report that has some value to it, even if it's a cautionary tale, don't do what I did, there's value in there. And then that gets him into the club. Another mechanism that we designed there was the Own Your Shit weekly posts. Those are for guys to put their own field reports, but within a proper format, as opposed to a testicular cancer meeting. They get their first post as what we call a victim puke. Anything you want to complain about, it's all in there. Get it out of your system. Never want to hear about it again, or you're out of the club. After that, you have to talk about what you have done to overcome your grievances and then what effect it had. And then at the end of it, if there's things specifically that you're not very good at, that's where you kind of reach out with like, what would you have done in this place? And that's mostly where guys help. This works great, and expand the analogy to whatever group you want to think about joining or creating on your own. It establishes to the group that this person is somewhat invested and he's willing to provide more value than receives in return. He's willing to put 15 minutes into a field report. And in the meantime, all he's going to get is maybe 100 people giving him 2 minutes of their input onto his field report. So it's a very asymmetric thing. But at the same time, both parties receive more than they had given. It's a synergy thing. So if you look at groups, like classic ones I could think of are the Shriners, where the purpose of the group was actually like charity, community type stuff. It was never about the guys getting together and hanging out with funny hats, driving goofy carts. It was always about those things. I think, what's the other one? The compass and the hammer. I keep thinking Illuminati, but that's not it. Anyways, whichever. Any one of those little like somewhat secret society clubs. It's the same thing. There has to be a purpose above each individual member. And that taps into why women can't really get in these spaces and have it work out well for everybody. Good example for this, you put a single girl into the space. The girls don't think about this stuff the same way we do. You put them in an office environment. It's never about what does the company need to thrive. It's always about what can I do for the company. Everything is very self-serving, which it's not a bad thing. It's just the way that they think about it. It works well in their type of organizations, but not so much in male-dominated ones. The problem is when there becomes a conflict with a girl shooting for status within an organization and doing something self-sacrificial in the benefit of the organization, the girls will always take the former, not the latter. And that diminishes group cohesion. The problem is when guys are in a group with a woman there, a lot of them will tend to switch their focus from the pushing forward of the group means into impressing the woman by becoming higher status. And so you get two sets of people basically jockeying for position, and the needs of the group become secondary. You put a second girl in that group, that becomes a pivot. Those two girls are pinging off of each other, competing over those same resources, male attention, and it ends up breaking the whole thing down. At what point, too, they become the authorities. It's the very strange thing. Guys will automatically, especially if there's very few girls in a space, make them the gatekeepers. There was a little series of tweets I had a little while ago where there was this 18-year-old libertarian girl. I can't remember her name, but she posted some one of those weird backhanded thirst trap comments where married guys need to stop hitting on me. It's creepy for your wives. And yeah, married guys shouldn't be hitting on chicks online. That's thirst trap stuff. That goes without saying. The part that I commented on is that that's a flex, where a girl's saying, look at all these guys that have the loves of their life and they're still hitting on me. Can you believe how popular I am? And I think I called the entire libertarian ideology down on me. The white knighting happened hard. It's fine. It was funny because at least a half a dozen girls who were libertarians in one form or another basically came into the private messages saying, yeah, she's this thirst trap all the time. We really hate that chick. She's completely bad. She doesn't really care. She just doesn't want dad telling her what to do. And you started to see that the group cohesion became about like protecting the women folk and their thing, which is, again, we're hardwired to this. There's no value judgment at it. The societies that protected their women against any outside threats tended to be the ones that survived. The problem is we have a chocolate cake society. That's another term I came up with about how our evolutionary instincts are not necessarily in our best interests today. Back in the day, Cave Bob and Cave Susan loved carbohydrates because they were hard to get. You had to chew on reeds, sugar cane for hours on end to get carbohydrates, and you had to do it or else you would starve. Problem came once we made chocolate cake. That impulse is still there, but the end result is different. I mean, you can't chew enough sugar cane to get diabetes, but you can eat enough chocolate cake too. And so for a good portion of what we do, we have to understand where our biological impulses are so that we can, what's the way to put this? So we can not let our nature get the best of us. I know that has a lot of resonance with a lot of the old religious arguments that basically denying our human nature is what makes us human beings. I'd argue that was a very rudimentary way of looking at it, but the theory is sound as long as you apply it on a more individual level. Understand what my instincts are, what their instincts are, and then map that to what actual beneficial practices are in modern society in the land of abundance. What are we on time here? Minute 33. All right, we're going to rehash a couple more of the questions here. Where'd it go? Yes, one of the guys, this is actually from a call. He had mentioned where he was actually a little sad that we don't have much more engagement in the community tab. Me being a straight up boomer when it came to Patreon, I noticed just now that we had one. And I did not realize this. And we should be using this stuff more. Honestly, I have nothing but time and patience for all of you guys that support me on Patreon. So let's start getting into the community tab, put up posts. I think Marty in sales here put it the best. What's up, losers? I don't know about y'all, but I love the Q&A videos. But he'd like everybody to get more involved and ask some questions or actually watch. I have a feeling he's going to stop doing them. Not going to stop doing them. Like I said, I made him as a deal to you guys that I'd be doing these ones, and even if nobody listens. And like I said, if I wanted people to listen, I would just make these things public videos, put a little bit of polish behind them. But at this point, you guys put a lot of faith and support into me, and the least I could do is put it into you. I treat it like a gift. And this is something else that is actually beneficial for a man in a relationship, is to stop thinking about covert contracts. For those that don't know, I always get Robert Glover and Manuel Smith mixed up on which one it was, but it's either from No More Mr. Nice Guy or When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. A covert contract is doing something with the unspoken expectation of somebody reciprocating. In this case, you guys support me on Patreon. I'm providing a service as best I can based on the tiers we got there. If you don't want to view them or you don't appreciate them, that's irrelevant. And that's the way that you can move forward without having a very... You'll have a lot less grievances in life. And I would say this is more just good general life advice, but it does resonate heavily with sexual strategy. If you're not willing to give somebody anything without expectations, then you're not giving them something. This is when you're loaning families money. This is when you're talking to a girl. This is when you're taking her out to dinner, everything. If anything you do for somebody comes without reservation, you're A, more likely to get reciprocal behavior out of it, and B, you're more likely not to see this as a grievance or, in extreme cases, a narcissistic injury if you don't have those expectations attached to it. The good thing on that, too, is this completely shuts down that stupid soccer mom argument of entitlement. Oh, a guy took me out to dinner. I pay the bill because he thinks he's entitled to sex. First off, no guy thinks that way. It's actually funny. We did a lot of discussions on this back before they kicked me out of Purple Pill debate for not liking me, but whatever. It turns out that the girl is expecting guys to be entitled. But no guy in there had that expectation. Or like, yeah, I went out, bought a girl dinner, have a good time, see where it goes. The girl, meanwhile, takes it as he did something for me. Now I feel like I'm obliged to do something back. So that whole argument is in the girl's head. Be aloof, remove the expectations of doing something and expecting reciprocation in return, and you're going to be far better off. It's also a nice display of higher value, and it's really going to take the load off of your emotional load from day to day. You're just going to be less angry. And I am not reading that username, Mr. X, but any advice for a 35-year-old chronic plate spinner? I don't know what would make plate spinning chronic. Great time to be a bachelor, awful time for marriage, monogamy, and wife with open cuckoldry and divorce rape. All right, first off, not agreeing with a lot of your sentiments there. Divorce rape and cuckoldry. First up, cuckoldry is a very specific thing. What you're talking about there is being cheated on, most likely. We talk about the extreme examples, most red pill guys do, and there's a purpose behind that. It's because guys are so horribly in love with the woman of Wollendorf, that female fertility goddess in their heads, that every woman is perfect, they can do no wrong, and you will put up with any bullshit from them because this is the best you're going to do. To get out of that mindset, you basically have to show guys, this is the absolute worst of female behavior. This is why it happens, and this is why every woman is capable of it, even though every woman won't take advantage of it. And this is this is where the not all women are like that versus all women are like that argument comes from. Nice, Chase. I'm glad you like the salsa. Did you make the sweet one or the smoky one? Anyways, to tap back into this. So divorce rape is another thing. There's strategies you can do to prevent a poor divorce. And most people I've seen who complain about divorce rape don't have vast empires of wealth. Those are your lower middle class, like third quintile or lower of income. And that's a scarcity mindset. As a man, if you continue to build your value, you're always going to make more money. If you constantly go into relationships like this with a clear head, knowing what the risks are and taking mitigating strategies, you can largely protect yourself. Or you'll find at what level your engagement stops. Like I said, it's very standard advice that getting married in this climate is not beneficial for men. For the few lawyers I've talked to, and do not take this as legal advice, this is mostly a legal theoretical strategy talk. The big things that guys do because they want to get married, there's 3 reasons. Well, 3 bad reasons. There's one good one. I'll start with that. A lot of guys find and meet their wives abroad and they want to bring them back into the country. And a lot of the times you kind of have to marry, otherwise they're not going to get the legal status to stay with you. Whether that's a good idea or not, whole other conversation. The 3 poor reasons for it are: 1, Jesus told you to do it, and that's what everybody else did. Horrible strategy. It's basically going in blind and hoping faith will solve everything. Half the time, it doesn't. Second reason is because they think the girl will leave them if they don't, which is possible. Some girls do treat marriage as a non-starter. Having said that, a lot of girls don't. They just want commitment. It's entirely possible to offer long-term commitment without marriage. I'm a living example of that. My girl and I, we have never gotten married. Canada made us common law about a year and a half into our relationship. But most of the time, just establishing that we're committed is good enough. And that's where beta behaviors come in handy. Not a lot of them, but just enough to establish it. Third reason, what was that one again? So I had that's what everybody else did. Oh yeah, third reason is because of children. And this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. Oh, this is and I always hate having this talk, but whatever, we're going with it. The whole point, well, when you argue with somebody about you get married because you want to have kids, and you ask them like, well, what does that mean? What does that infer past the point that being single does? And they usually say because you automatically are granted paternity. That's the thing, though. You can still establish paternity and be a father in a kid's life without being married. There are some legal hoops. You have to establish paternity, that birth certificate, apply for it, receive it. There's some costs associated with it. But at the same time, getting a divorce also has costs associated with, as does fighting paternity if you find out the child's not yours. In those cases of guys where they have paternity fraud. And so there's always going to be some kind of legal and financial obstacle here to get your goals. You can either pay on the front end and establish paternity beforehand, or establish it on the back end during a divorce. It's going to happen anyway. And if this is that important to you, a few $1,000s to establish paternity commitment without tying yourself up financially like that is a very sound strategy. So when I see a guy who will argue that that possible solution, or at least investigate it, while at the same time talking about divorce rape, is being disingenuous. And the one thing you can say for sure is that's not his reason for not wanting to settle down and get committed. That's another topic, though. We'll get to directly to your question now. Advice for a chronic plate spinner. Well, the big question there is, what do you want? A lot of these questions, and this is, if I can impart anything onto you guys, it's this. When you have a question, know what result you want to get from the advice. So to be a chronic plate spinner, is your advice you want to be able to do it better? You want to do it more? You want to go from plates to one night stands? You want to promote one of those plates. Depending on what your end goal is, your strategy can be completely different. But by asking, just in general, what advice do you have? What that's doing is that's putting the onus of your life responsibility and mission onto another person. Problem with that comes with who you ask, because they are always going to make you fit to their goals and not yours. You ask a girl you're dating on good advice, her advice is to wife her up. You ask your preacher, his advice is going to be to take that single mom in the pews and wife her up. You ask your dad, he's going to say, give me grandkids. You're going to ask anybody, and they're going to tell you what's best for them, not what's best for you. So we'll see. Add an answer for what you want out of this. I call it the wave your magic wand, see what happens. If you get that, we'll go back to your question. Chase did the sweet one. Yeah, I prefer it too. I can't remember what the science was, but something about sweet flavors in salsa help mitigate the lasting effects of the spice, so it doesn't linger quite as long. Oh, there we go. I see your thing now. Ooh, thank you. Super chat. Was not expecting these ones. These were mostly Patreon stuff, but thank you for the super chat. Framework for vetting wife and kids. Thank you, sir. I think there is no technique for vetting. I find vetting to be a very lazy technique that people use in their relationships. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying if people use that as the be all and end all, is the equivalent of guys who say, when your wife's cheated on you, what you do? You say marriage counselor. You're putting the onus on your life in the hands of a checklist. And I'm sure you guys have all seen those 10 checklists to be more alfalfa, and you just got to shake your head because it's lazy. But a good way to answer your question is strong boundary enforcement and low tolerance, commensurate with your value. So I'm assuming when you say you want to vet for wife and kids, you mean vet for having a wife and vet for having kids with her, not having a wife and having kids, because that's a little bit of that Epstein thing, and I don't want to go there. But yeah, boundary enforcement. Have a good list of things in your head that you will and will not put up with in a relationship. Not things that she will or will not do to keep you happy, but things you will or will not put up with. Another client I had talked to about this one just recently, I think it was this week, where girl was going out on a girl's night out. And this is the very easy example. Guys aren't very comfortable when a girl goes out sledding without them if they're in a monogamous relationship. I gave you commitment. The least you can do is put the thoughtery on hold until we break up. What guys normally do is say, you can't go out. We're together. To which point the girl will just say, you can't tell me what to do. I'm a strong, independent woman. She'll go out, probably angry at you. Something may happen, something may not. The point is, it sets a precedence. If she ever decides to do something, she now has that plausible deniability. Well, you've always let me go out with my friends. Why all of a sudden now is it an issue? Instead, you enforce your boundaries. What are those? If you guys look back to my video on boundary enforcement, attention, affection, commitment. You pull them commensurate with the value you receive in a relationship. In this case, if she wants to go and put herself out there for another man, even if it's not her intention, it has the result of this. Well, I don't date girls monogamously that go out on girls' nights out. Leave it there. Have fun. What that says is where your boundaries are. You've given a very clear delineation line. This is what I put up with, no more. And then it's up to her. A lot of women will test the boundaries, which they do because most guys just buckle as soon as you raise an eyebrow. And if you don't enforce them, you didn't have a boundary, you had an ultimatum. And you've just proven right there that you're able to be walked over. You're that type of guy now that gets cheated on and then takes her back and forgives her. Because it's probably your fault because you didn't do enough dishes or some hogwash nonsense. So if that in that example, the girls goes out with the friends, has a girls' nights out, you pack her stuff, put it at the door, change the locks, do what you got to do. She's out of your life. The earlier and more often you do these boundaries, the better you're able to, and it's not even a vetting. You're just giving a girl a chance to show that she'll crawl through broken glass for you. That whole, if a guy is alpha enough thing. That's what you're doing here. You want to see how invested she is in the relationship because she's automatically the arbitrator of the relationship. That's Briffault's law. That's 101 stuff. So you're ensuring that she's always more invested than you because she's the one that can ultimately make a relationship break or succeed. And you never give more than she gives. It's always 2/3 of what she gives. So hopefully that answers your question on that one. As for your chronic plate spinner, yeah, if you're not unhappy with the situation, why change anything? If you are unhappy with it, then see what it is you want to change. Franco's book, Practical Female Psychology, has a good point on this, acting congruent with your goals. If you're trying to find a wife or a girlfriend, stop treating them like plates. Stop acting like the lover, add a little more provider in there. Now, at the same time, you need good sex in order to foster a good relationship. So you need to start from a plate. And then after you've given her opportunities to give good girlfriend behavior, you slowly promote girls. And this is the Human Sock Puppets Bitch Management Guide, he calls it. It's a great read. It's on the subreddit. Feel free to check it out. Going back here, Welsh, 45-year-old male in good shape. I get attention, but have no game. How do I avoid the interview questions? Make up stupid answers that tell stories. Just lie. Obviously lie. I used to do this all the time when you talk to girls because girls have no game. Like you say you have no game, girls have no game. Find your most attractive friend, ask to see his Tinder profile and see the direct messages. When girls open him, you will see some of the cringiest openers ever. Having said that, you just kind of have to expect they have no game and they're just going to try to give you a laundry list of interview questions. What I used to do is I used to lie about my job. I never told girls that I was a sailor. I said I was a boring accountant. And I used to drive a Nissan Sentra, which is true. But I also drove a warship, but whatever. The point was the questions were boring. He lost interest in them. And I always had this big goofy grin. And to look at me, walk around and do my thing, it was pretty obvious I wasn't an accountant, but I just didn't want to talk about it. But then it creates a game, a nice, fun environment. You're not giving a girl too much information about you right at the start because that kills all the magic. She wants to earn the mystery. She needs to learn about you and she has to earn that. Otherwise, she's just not going to respect you. She's not going to get any genuine desire. And this is as true as it's always been. The best you can hope for when it comes to opening up too much on a first date is having your status precede you. If you're some kind of minor celebrity or have status within whatever social circle you're dating in, usually that precedes you and they already know. But at that point, you're not getting asked questions. Oh, you dropped your mic. I'm very sorry to hear that, man. From Triple S 86, as a legal immigrant in the United States, 11 years now, I have decided to move back home to travel and start something of my own eventually, which I can't with my current status in the US. Just like you, I got RP'd at work. The why you need to look back and laugh at yourself is spot on. Awesome, man. Glad to hear it. And this just reinforces a point I always tell guys where Rolo or Carl or myself will say something and the guy will be like, my God, it's like you were describing my life. I wish I could say it was because we're some genius guys. We're very smart. We've done this arcane research. In reality, guys have maybe 6 general situations that happen to us. We're remarkably similar. We almost always have the same scenarios happen from the same reasons, for the same things, from the same people. And a lot of it is just pattern recognition and repetition. After you hear about 100 guys' problems, you start to get a really good idea on what the 6 strategies are to get out of them. Some personal advice or some book advice for self-development. I like how you oh, I guess I should yell. Don't worry about the caps. Yeah, when you talked about that, I hate self-improvement. So I like how you said self-development because it implies that there's not a single path of improvement for a guy. As for the books, it all depends on what you want to develop. Easiest thing I can describe there, if you could be more specific, like develop what? Wave a magic wand. What skill do you have tomorrow that you didn't have today that you want to get? And that'll help if I can, and I know the avenue, what you can take there. From Welsh, a follow-up, how do I avoid giving them the interview questions? On that one there, don't ask. Don't ask any questions from a girl. Make statements. Make assumptions. it's a natural part of the human condition that even if somebody doesn't like you, if they're not particularly engaged, people cannot resist the urge to correct something that you get wrong. People love to flex how smart they are. They love to flex how they're right and you're wrong. Make an assumption, make it playful, give it just a tinge of and I guess this is kind of like negative, but just a little tinge of negativity to it. Another one, I was talking with a client today, he was talking about sorority stuff, where he knew somebody was from a certain sorority based on their outfit or something like that. Anyway, the point was, I'm like, all right, well, in the opener, that one's pretty easy. Like, I went to a school that had a lot of local towns in nearby. Everybody kind of knew reputations from it. So I'll use my example. I was from the interior of BC, and you'd met girls from Quesnel. And if you know Quesnel, that's kind of like every drug dealer you meet in the North Thompson is going to be from Quesnel. And so if a girl said she's from Quesnel, you're like, oh, so you're a drug dealer then, right? Right there, most girls aren't drug dealers. The ones that are will just, yeah, do you want some? And you can take that path if you want. But they'll completely correct the reputation. Like, no, I'm not one of those Quesnel girls. I'm more like, I'm the good one. But they're correcting you. And at that point, they put themselves on the defensive. They're deferring to you. It's this weird, and Mystery called it, what did he call it? Forgive the term here. Not pre-selection, but I cannot remember the term. One of you guys in chat will have to help me out on that. But what he used to do, and what Rolo actually did back in his game days, he would give a girl a task. Here, hold my drink. Here, hold this necklace for a minute. And then he would tell a story. And by the girl doing that favor for him, she did what's called the Ben Franklin effect. Well, I did this nice thing for this guy. I must actually like him. It taps into that same psychological thing there, and it helps build rapport. Like I said, this isn't going to be the magic bullet. It's not manipulative. It's essentially just allowing somebody to get out of their own way to see you as the great guy you already are, so you can put your best foot forward and they can realize that they have a prize in front of them that they don't want to miss. Girls naturally, yes, and it also builds tension. Girls naturally have this, and it's something that Dr. Buss and Cindy Miston talked about in their book, Why Women Have Sex. I think it's dead set in the middle. It's the innate skepticism bias. Women are hardwired to take any displays of affection or love or commitment, any affectionate displays from men, and automatically assume that they're fake. They had to, because back then guys learned if I told a girl that I'd marry her, she'd let me sleep with her, and then I could leave. In fact, that's why the engagement ring got invented. Guys were basically promising marriage. Then once you're engaged, you're like, well, we're pretty much married. Let's fool around. And then the guy would skedaddle. Problem is then, well, now she just lost her virginity and no guy wants her. So what a lot of parents did is they're like, okay, fine. You need to spend this much money on an engagement ring. And that's his way of putting a down payment on it, essentially. So like I said, these things all have a neat little history to them. It's kind of cool to get into it. I want to move out of Africa. Any recommendations? I would say take a plane, because a lot of guys tried going by boat. Didn't work out so well. Interested what I am reading. Books for entrepreneurship and public speaking for seminars. There we go. That's a question I can answer. For books, depending on how you get into these things. So we all have that need to jerk ourselves off about how philosophical and smart we are. I know I have a lot of stuff by Christopher Hitchens, like his Pocket Atheist. In fact, I should go look at this. My bookshelf is like, I got one that's up here on top. I've actually thrown out a lot over the years because it's been too hard to move with them over the years. But a lot of the ones that I've kept over the ages have been down here. So I can kind of go over those. For me, I like building. I like art. I love studying art, and I did it in school. That was actually my first degree, was graphic design and art history as a minor. Fuck, I'm running over my own cable. But one book I definitely recommend here, Art Fundamentals, Theory and Practice. The orange one in the corner here. Awesome for understanding the general movement of art from Paleolithic times to the modern day. It's also where a lot of people really get the idea that modern art is crap wrong. I can get into that, but we have limited time. I'm not going to waste it here. The Portable Atheist, Christopher Hitchens, is always good. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. I always like that book. I find it's one of those ones, it's a slow burn read, because as you read it, it seems like a lot of power game stuff, not very applicable. But keeping those in mind, eventually you're going to come up into situations where you're able to map the concepts to the actual life experience, but that doesn't come right away, and it doesn't come all at once. 6 months from now, you're like, oh, right, never outshine the master. That's why that went wrong. And then you can kind of start adopting those things there. Other ones I like when it comes to more corporate stuff, there's one called The Org, and that's by Ray Fishman and Tim Sullivan. I liked that one because it was talked a lot about how like corporate organizations happen, how to work within them. If you want to get more to the game side of things, then you've got Venkatesh Rao. He has the Gervais Principle, Be Slightly Evil, and Tempo. 3 other books I highly recommend for getting mental models straight in your head, for understanding how organizations self-develop, and that's between the clueless, the losers, and the psychopaths, and how the talk between them works. It's been a really good primer for those who want to learn about power talk anyway. Beyond that, I won't say cookbooks. There actually is one book I got that a lot of guys recommended to me, and I'm going to laugh. Here's actually a funny story then. I can't remember who recommended it to me. It was somebody from the Married Red Pill. It's this book from the 70s, and you can't get any more copies of it other than like used ones. It's called The Hazards of Being Male by Herb Goldberg, PhD, co-author of Creative Aggression. I got it off of, and it came in. As soon as it came in, my wife, she looked at it, she looked at me, and she called me I'm not allowed to say it on YouTube without getting blocked, but she basically called me a homosexual for 20 minutes and laughed at me. So I haven't read it since. As far as I know, it's a lot of that. But I assume it's most of the MRA talking points I kind of already know. So I don't think I'm missing out on anything. I'll probably get to it after I've gone through my shopping list of other books that are worth getting. Other books, anything on project management, I think is good. It's nice. It helps you kind of plan things a bit better. Oh, I can't believe I forgot about this one. One book I recommend everybody read. Finally, some good news by Delicious Tacos. Let's get that one in focus there. I love this book. So it's something that the manosphere has been really lax on. We don't have many creative writers. When people talk about this, I'll get to the Africa one in a sec, but when people talk about this stuff, women write all the books now, all the fantasy, all the lore. It's always aimed at women and children. Last time we had a male Britain book was Fight Club. Before that, Dead Poet Society. I think, did they make a book of that, or was it just a movie? And then before that, basically Bukowski. So there is no male writers writing to a male audience. And this is one of the few that I've seen that do that. Plus the fact that I got him to actually sign it for me, which is awesome. See if I can get this picture on there. It's probably the greatest book signature I've ever seen. Absolutely hilarious. I can't recommend him enough. I don't have an affiliate link to it, so you're just going to have to trust that it's a good book and buy it yourself. Ryan, I meant what country is best for an African male to emigrate to? Oh, okay. I want to say Canada, because 1, right now it's easy, and 2, we've got a very healthy middle class as long as you got marketable skills. Our entrance exams are a little bit harder than the States. I can't really say about the States. I've never lived there. I've visited there a bunch of times, and I don't really like... There's something about it. I don't think I would ever live there. Ask an American on there. They'll probably give you a more nuanced example. I've only ever seen the East Coast, the West Coast, the northern states, and I think I made it 2 states in from the northern border. So there's a whole swath of the heartland and the southern border that I have not been to that I couldn't really comment on. Another one that's good that a lot of people don't think of, Britain's a bit high. Yeah, I would probably have to say Canada. I hate to say it, but especially if you can get to the less traveled provinces. Everybody comes here and goes to Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver. And we've got huge housing gluts where there's not enough housing. The prices are too high. Social services are taking a dive. And because there's been such an influx of migration here, like 40% of Toronto is first-generation immigrants. The problem with that is there's no integration. So we have like these very racially homogenous ghettos. So if you come to Toronto, If you're Asian, you're most likely going to move to Markham because that's 80% Southeast Asian. If you're East Indian or Sikh, you're most likely going to move to Brampton, which I think is like 75%. And you're going to end up just basically sticking with the same nations that you grew up around inside of Toronto. So you're not really getting the Canadian experience. Having said that, if you hit up Alberta, or if you want to actually hit the cold areas like Saskatchewan, you're probably going to have a much more interesting Canadian experience. And I think you're going to have a great time. Oh, he's on the gin and tonic. He's an ex-matelot. Oh, are you French then? Eh, matelot chef? Matelot chef is French for master seaman. I think matelot means master. You have to forgive me. My French is very anglicized. So any good project management techniques, tidbits to help get through life work? Okay, the book stuff is good. I find the best example is making sure you hold people accountable and you get clear ideas about what resources are given to you. And that's going to be your sponsor's job. I've had to take up project management responsibilities in a few projects, mostly because our project would have a sponsor, but we couldn't afford or get the time away from a PM. And their director always ended up being a bit of a tight ass. So I ended up having to take ad hoc PM duties on my projects. The big key to that is getting people on board. And the best way to do that, and this will help you day to day in everything, but especially project management, frame everything as how it benefits the person you're trying to get resources from. If you need 3 developers from your director's team, make sure you can tell him, here, I finished this project. I can cut 10% away from your development time because we're using these new tools. Or we're going to be doing this budgetary thing, and that's going to save your side this much money. If you can do something to get that director to actually believe that he will get a promotion or a bonus or just easier work time from your work, he's more than likely able and willing to help you. Same thing for the other guys. I know for every place when you work, you'll have a few infrastructure guys that are basically completely holding the fort down, and they're working long hours and they're just tired and nobody else understands and they're very stupid. Framing things to them as making their life easier is the easiest way to get them on board with helping you. So those are the best tips I can give on that. Oh, Royal Navy uses matelot as well. That's funny. I always thought that was French because that's what the Quebecois always call it. For Bo Ween, how do you make yourself accountable? Yeah, it's just got to be, there's internal and external motivation on these ones. External motivation is that if I do this, I get sex. If I do this, mom will pet me on the head. I get the golden star. I'll treat myself with a reward. Those are temporary. Those are fleeting. And they never work over the long term. You essentially have to think of yourself as, I do these things because I'm not that guy who's the bag of shit who doesn't do them. So you have to be hard on yourself. But at the same time, you can't go and eat paint with this warning and become one of those perfectionists that refuses to do anything unless you can do it perfectly, or refuse to stop doing something when it's good enough because you want to get it perfect. That's taking it too extreme, but just a healthy dose of internal motivation of just positive self-worth. Beyond that, you really are the only one that can hold yourself accountable. I would say don't do that stupid stuff like rewards and punishments. The act itself and the process has to be a reward. Having said that, if you set yourself up for failure or for success early on, it's almost impossible to fail. And that means if you're eating healthy and wanting to lose weight, don't buy candy anymore. So then it's much easier to hold your diet accountable when you don't have something you can quickly grab at. From Triple S86, are you currently 100% self-employed? I don't know how to answer that one. I guess yes, no. I mean, I earn money by doing work. I'm not getting a paycheck from somebody else that pays payroll tax, but we'll see. Understanding lean or lean Six Sigma is amazing to understand, break down, improve. Yeah, my buddy swears by that. He's got his master's in economics right now. He loves that Six Sigma stuff, and it seems to work really well for him. He's a kind of lot like Carl would be if Carl was Chad in high school. All right. One from Chris. How do you really know when to bail on dating on a long-term relationship when there is not one big thing that's wrong, but a lot of small problems, small fights? Mid-40s couple. I'm going to defer to some literature on this one. I know I've really got to go back to the original research, so I really hope I'm not just repeating bro relationship pop science from Vox stuff here, but if I remember the study read, it had and this is taken sort of from Tempo 2, you take the positive and negative axis on every interaction you have, positive, negative, and then the strengths. Take a map of your relationships. In this case, they suggest drawing Venkatesh would argue drawing a circle. Bigger circle for stronger emotions, smaller circle for weaker emotions, darker circles for negative emotions, lighter circles for positive ones. Over the week, every engagement you have with your wife, you either have, or your long-term relationship, either put neutral, positive, negative, and then the strength. At the end of the week, you look back and you take a look at it. And if the ratio of positive to negative is, or negative to positive is 8-to-1 or worse, statistically, you probably are going to be broken up or divorced within a year. If you want to defer to the numbers. From my personal experience, I would just say, once you start making excuses for why the bad things are good enough, you probably already have your answer and you just need somebody to kill the puppy. That's a hard one, and we talk about it not a lot, but not enough either. When a girl is done with a relationship, they generally don't just end the relationship. Ending a relationship makes you a bad person. They may cheat. They may make themselves completely ornery and unlivable with to want you to break up with them, but they very, very rarely say this isn't working and take the initiative themselves. So a lot of the time, it's once you have to ask the question, a lot of the time is you kind of already know the answer. You just want somebody to give you permission and to say it's okay and you're not a bad person. So I am here to officially give everybody in this chat the 100% red-pilled Ryan Stone seal of approval on to do what it is you think you need to do. Congratulations. I always like that one. But yeah, you're going to be the bad guy when you break up with somebody, at least for a little while. Accept it, move on. Let me see here. So I got a couple more minutes, so I'm just going to do rapid fire with the last questions to let you guys go. So for those who don't know, this is what I do with Patreon once a week. We get, during the week, you ask any and all questions you have. At the end of the week, I put them in. We do up a Patreon video. I keep it very informal like this. If I can read any Red Pill material back, show some references, I bring that up as well. And we deal that one as well. All right, so the rapid fire stuff. Dialer String, what are your thoughts on retroactively scorching Earth after going through infidelity or letting the new you make the decision to leave after finding it? Oh, yeah. So you basically let that one slide and now you're having second thoughts on it. So 2 thoughts on this. 1, if you decide that you're going to forgive somebody for something, you got to own that. Having said that, as a guy, and this is straight out of Robert Glover's book, you're allowed to change your mind. So if you are done and you've decided that, yeah, I tried and it's not worth it, then yeah, scorched earth, a deliberate scorched earth is your best approach. Get your ducks in a row, talk with the divorce people, get yourself set up, start flirting again, see if your game's well. By the time you drop the papers on her lap, all the work should be done, and all that's required is a signature. As soon as you give a heads up that this is going on, all you're going to do is give that person a good chance to weaponize a divorce proceeding against you, and they will do it. Many, many divorces and the many of the way guys have their lives set up are guaranteed that a woman has all the cards. What you're doing there is you're getting yourself that extra 6 months to prepare yourself so that you're on the best footing possible. And usually when you want to separate from somebody, you're more than often going to be magnanimous about it. Girls tend to be the most vindictive ones, and the guys listening to me are most likely not going to be vindictive, or they wouldn't need to listen to my advice on it anyway. So it's very easy to have a magnanimous and very equal separation and division when you come from a position of strength. So go from there. Is there any way to use my RP knowledge to have an amicable relationship? Like I said, the best way to have an amicable relationship is to come from a position of strength. Most guys I've seen that have battle axe wives who eventually got divorced, until the wife got called out by the judge for bad behavior and they had a good chance of losing their kids, they never acted well. Usually at that point where she has to is the only time she will. But then again, you know your girl better than I do. Put the puppies in the plastic bag and then throw them into the river. Yeah, don't do that. Dude, I like dogs. I'm a dog guy. Why would you use that analogy? How much is Patreon? I know. So the first tier, I just threw that in. It's like literally $1, the least you could do. I honestly have no idea what I could offer. I just put least you could do. That's just general support. Thank you very much. I think nobody takes it. I don't know why they would, but it's there if you want it. $5, you end up getting advanced viewings of any videos that I get done prior to their release date, as well as these Patreons here. Advanced posts I put in the meantime. And we're going to be starting a private community of sorts once I work out the details there. So that's going to be awesome. We're going to have much more free-flowing talk, because right now, obviously, there's some things I can't say because it's social media and I don't want to get banned. The email list is the only other place where I do that, but this one is a more back and forth engagement on that one. Six Sigma is Goose, but when applied improperly can just be as hindrance as if it never applied at all. Well, that's with anything. Dialer String, thanks, Ryan. Thank you, guys. All right. So there's the preview of what we're doing here week in, week out. I'm going to probably either do a double length one, maybe two or something, because I completely forgot, and this is my bad. Forgot to put the post in this week's Patreon so the guys were aware this one existed. So we went live with this one. But I'll catch you guys on the next one.